Welcome back to The Loud Lens, the photography podcast that delivers the truth of a steel cat boot. I'm Khandie, multi-award winning, but honestly, I keep saying that. Who isn't these days? There's so many fake awards out there. Blunt educator, podcast host, and not so silent observer of the photographic industry BS. Today's episode is something that's I picked up on the old TikTok that day, TikTok. Yeah. This is for creatives who basically shove aside the public, and it's become quite prevalent now that everyone's filming everybody. And essentially people are being called out for their bad behavior. So this episode is called Get Out of My Shot. Can you give me space? I don't know. Why influencers and photographers don't own public spaces, which kind of goes without saying, right? But if you go on social media, you will see it's rife. I mean, recently I scroll in TikTok and Instagram, and there are people, there's literally a hashtag for influencers in the wild, who are full of people kicking off in parks, shouting at children, claiming entire streets. I mean, even in the gym culture, you might have seen Joey Swole does this, where he outs people in the gym, claiming that they own the space because they're recording it and annoyed that people are using the space. So we're going to break this episode down because I know there's a lot of people angry out there, and I don't want to offend anyone except the people who are doing this maybe. So we're going to look at the law, we're going to look at the ethics, how entitlement backfires, a couple of horror stories. I've got some perfect examples. You're going to love them. And more importantly, how to shoot in public like a professional, not a prick. So let's start with the problem, okay? So as I've seen it, I'm sure you've seen it, TikTok has so many so-called influencers out there, and they are often, if you look at this hashtag, caught doing unscrupulous things, such as yelling at tourists for being in the frame. And I saw this someone shared this literally on my feed this morning. There was a girl who's on holiday at this beautiful location, and she said that there was a woman who set up a tripod by the family pool. And by admission, the family pool has got a beautiful view of palm trees and stuff. And she told her father and his daughter to stay out of the frame because she wanted some pictures. Bear in mind, she didn't hire this pool. It's the family pool. There is an adult pool elsewhere, but she wanted this one. It does not look good. I have also seen photographers who have taped off wildflower fields, I guess you could say, wildflower areas, fields, and demand that families don't enter, even though this is a private area. And I know I go on about the bluebells, but that is something I really hate, that people just feel that they can trash them, even though they are protected by law. But because no one's around them telling them, oh, don't do that, they're like, well, no one saw me do it, so it doesn't matter. Okay, content creators in public parks filming emotional reels, then kicking off because kids are playing by. I'm going to share you this story. I said I was going to do some examples later. Let me share you the story. So right near where my studio is this huge grassy area, and it has a couple of play parks. And there was a girl sat in the basketball area, and she set up a tripod, and she was doing this emotional thing about how she couldn't. I was playing basketball with my friends, so she asked us to stop bouncing the ball because it was interrupting her content. But she's literally sat on the basketball field, right? The basketball pitch, whatever you call it. So you can tell I don't play basketball very much. I was shooting hoops, trying to be cool. I was not. And she told us we couldn't because she was trying to connect with her audience. And I looked at her, I'm sorry, what? She went, I'm trying to connect with my audience. She literally, and I'm not, I don't know how I could, like, you are not going to believe, she had a bottle that had a droplet, and she was putting tears on her face. And she was talking about how she couldn't go to some event because she didn't have a dress, and she was asking her people to help her because it was her career move. And we were all like, huh? Anyway. There's also the famous one of the wedding photographer in the middle of Covent Garden making people like move out of the way, even though he didn't have a permit, and he actually got removed because Covent Garden is actually privately owned, if I remember rightly, and people go mad. Okay, seriously, you do not own space. If you think you own it, you need to be booking it. That's the only way I can get around this. You cannot take control of a public space and think that you have the right to dictate what goes on. You actually have to share it, and your entitlement does not mean that you have more say in what goes on there. Okay, I ran around the field a couple of weeks ago, and I saw people doing a music video, and they told me I couldn't run down this one pathway. Now, I'm cool, I'm okay with that. But then they said, because you not run past because we need to film, and every time you run past, we have to stop filming. And I'm like, it's a park. I'm running. I've already said I won't go down that pathway, but because yeah, but we can see you in the background. I'm like, it's a park. Like, what? And so I said, fine, because I need to run. I'm training for a half marathon. And they were there for the duration of my run. I was there for over an hour. They were stopping people using the using the pathway and going past them for over an hour. That is insane. This is a public space, okay? Now let's talk about the law on this. And I know people are like, but the law. And there's the thing between the law, what you can and can't do, and the ethics of it. So let's break it down, okay? Now, I'm no solicitor, but I did the old Google, which you too can do, you know? So it is legal to photograph and film in public spaces in the UK if you're on public land, but that doesn't mean necessarily every street and beach is public. So you might want to look into that, or park, because you can access it, particularly those London parks, you might find you need a permit. You can shoot though. Full stop. You don't need permission. But again, you need to actually check if it is public. There are many places that you think are public that are not. One of the ones that surprised me was Southend on Sea, seafront. Like, that was one that you need a permit for. By the way, having been that person trying to get that permit, no, bloody hard. So it doesn't mean, though, that you're allowed to block access, obstruct footpaths, tape off any area, or demand others move or be silent. That's where you go from being photographer, content creator, actually a public nuisance. And there are some places that look public that aren't. For example, I'm just doing some quick Googles now. Westfield shopping centres. There are many private squares in London. There are many private maintained parks and gardens. Just because they have open gates, they're technically private land. And one that gets me as a country girl, people who walk into farmers' fields. Okay. Sometimes they have a right of way access, a path, but that means you must stay on that path. You cannot step off it. Okay. You or anybody. I have seen this happen time and time again. Okay. Another one that is going to get a load of people done. This is the drone use. Now, drone usage in the UK is going through a big change right now. But people flying drones over public spaces, you want to check with the Civil Aviation Authority that you have insurance, you've done a risk assessment, out and you're registered. Obviously it depends on certain parameters, so everyone's going to jump at me, but you are risking fines and seizure. So I know people are going to go, oh, it's only a drone. I think I told this story on my Instagram. I actually filmed the guy. So I was sat having a coffee outside a church area. It's got a cafe inside it here in Northampton. And this guy bought one of these big drones. So I'm not talking about the DJI Neo, the little one that I love and everyone else seems to love. I'm talking one of those big, like, Mavic ones, the big ones, right? And he flew it outside the church, low level, and went round this lamppost. Now, to tell you how tall, how high he was up, he was below the light by a good meter, the main light of the lamppost, and there was birds all around. And I'm sure he got a great shot, but there were also children playing and families having their. He was so low, people were getting really annoyed. And I think at one point somebody did end up calling the police on it because they were like, this is not okay, because it was so loud and it disrupted a lot of things. But also the rules are you can't fly that low. So it's people like this that mean the laws have to be changed. It means that when people kick off who are operating legally, then have their rights restricted because people can't follow the basic rules. So there is honestly no law that can make you a king of the courtyard. Gives you permission to exist, but not your right to dominate. And I feel that people feel that because they have access to it, they can control this whole area. Public space is for all the public, but sometimes what you think is public space isn't. You have to do your due diligence. And I know for a fact there is a photographer here. In fact, it was on my Instagram. A photographer was photographing on the London Underground. I'll save her name from this podcast. And she kicked off online. I mean, some people were very thought she was being unprofessional, whatever, because the TFL wrote to her and said, you owe us money because you've infringed our copyright. You cannot be photographing commercially on our site. And people seem to forget what commercial is. Now, I've gone into that in many other podcasts, but I'll say it here again. Commercial does not have to be paid. Anything that you put onto your business is commercial, okay? Anything that you are promoting with, marketing with, anything. If it goes onto your business stuff, you haven't kept it private, it is then considered commercial by most people, okay? And by the law, if I understand it to be. Now, let's talk about the ethical side. Now, ethics is something that is a personal relationship between all of you. Just because you're allowed to shoot somewhere, it doesn't mean you have to act like the main character in everyone else's space. And I know, right? I have seen people in London, particularly around London Fashion Week, this has happened. Well, I'm filming, and also quite a lot in the gyms. In the gym. I have a great story about a content creator in our gym. So I go to one of those cheap 24-hour gyms, right? It's right around the corner and from the studio, and if I go down there. Myself and one of my friends who is a PT at this gym. It was about 9 o'clock at night, maybe even 10 o'clock at night, and we go quite late. And this girl and her friend had set up all this equipment in the exercise space. There's like a matted area that they often put classes in, and she'd set up all this equipment, and they set up loads of tripods, and set up 2 tripods on each, and they were doing like quick workouts to show how to do this, and that's fine. That's what you want to do. Except I was in the background pushing this sledge, right? And they got really annoyed with me because I was doing a workout in the back. But please understand, I was there before them. Okay. It wasn't like I said, but equally, this is a gym. I pay a membership. I should be able to do what I want to do. Now, you could go, oh, but Khandie, it's only a few minutes. They were there for 40 minutes filming this stuff, which meant 40 minutes. And every time someone went on equipment, which was, don't get me wrong, people in the far background were fine. But because of how narrow this space is and how much room they took up, they were maybe 2 meters max distance from me. So I was definitely in their shot. They also, that's my dog drinking water right on cue. He always does this when I'm recording. I could lock him out, but he's such a cute boy. Isn't that right, Elvis Houdini? Yes, my dog's called Elvis Houdini. So then they were filming. And then what made it worse is when they finished filming, by the way, they had spray bottles to show fake sweat, which I thought was just genius. They left all the equipment. And when they were told to go clean it up, they would, by my friend who's a PT, they went, no, we don't do that. So not only had they behaved appallingly, like making everyone move from around their filming area, they didn't even try to clean it up. So my friend being the P says, okay, I'll make you famous then. They went, what? So she filmed and had filmed me doing the sledge. And in the background, you can see them making horrible faces and very unimpressed with me. But also the fact that she left it and she knew all their Instagrams, and just the fact she threatened to out them, that made them behave better. Okay. Now, I know that ethically, that they should have cleaned it up. I don't think it's illegal to dump it. It might breach the terms because it's the gym, but I'll be honest, most gyms aren't enforcing this, which is why these kind of behaviors can breed. Okay. But I have seen people stop runners in parks because you want a clean shot of the dress in the wind and you don't want them there. I have seen it because people have done it. You can go on to, I said it again, Influence in the Wild. Go check it out what people are doing. I've seen photographers. There is this famous one with a couple on like an embankment into the water, and the photographer with this shot of like a plane going over, and I mean, people are divided on this. But there was a woman who was walking, she wanted to get past because she wanted to walk down the embankment, but this couple blocked the entire embankment. They had those two, and then they had the photographer, and they wanted this shot of the plane going over, and she said, can you wait? The woman said, no, I don't want to wait. Here's the thing, while you might think it'd be very kind for her to wait so you can get the shot, the thing is, you cannot have this expectation that people should wait for you. I know that we're like, oh my God, why didn't she just wait? And people were going mad about her, but she has every right to access that space. Okay, every single right. And yes, we would be like to think people would stop for us. But how long had that couple been on that platform blocking people going? That's like, you didn't see them before. You didn't have much context on it. And I know for a fact, there's no way they set this up in 2 seconds and that was it. Like, they doesn't, like, they were there. I'm like, I'm out on this one. Okay. This is the worst bit. This behavior isn't just annoying, but it's damaging. Okay. And people don't see how it can be damaging. So I know for a fact that local councils have started to, or should I say landowners, that's probably a better way of saying it, not councils, have shut down areas for future photographers. There used to be this amazing like confetti type field, with all the different flowers. It was very beautiful. That was just outside here in Northamptonshire. And it was public access because it wasn't public access, it was a farmer's field, and he was quite happy that people would go in there until he started hearing people were pulling up his flowers, were demanding spaces, and then were like using his space to create content for themselves, but also were charging people to have photos there. So they were using his land, earning money off his land, but giving him no reciprocation at all. And he also hated the fact that people were damaging it. Like, he thought people were just going to come have a look, maybe stand on the pathways, but they weren't. And he decided, no, do you know what? We're not doing this. And he closed the whole thing down. And then this year, when some content creators went over there, he had them done for trespass. So all I'm going to say is this behavior has a knock-on effect. Parks are enforcing permits heavier than before. Okay. I remember going to, is it Chelsea? Was it the thing in London? Oh, I forgot what it's called now. Greenwich Park. Yeah, Greenwich. Chelsea. I'm confused which one I'm talking about now. Anyway, so you need a permit to shoot that, and I think it's currently, to do an engagement session, it's like £250 permit to be there. And everyone's like, oh my God, that's so expensive. You can just walk in. It's their land. They own it. You want the shots because of the exteriors and all of that. That costs money to maintain, but you don't want to part with that. You just want to use it freely while they have to keep maintaining it because the amount of footfall that happens. And if I'm just one person. Yes, and so are about 1,000 other people who walk through there, just one person. Like, it starts becoming a thing. And as this behavior continues, the public start associating photographers with arrogance. I'm going to say that they are. I have seen people who are on TikTok, especially, who said that every time they see someone set up a tripod or a photographer start setting up a shoot, they would deliberately cannonball the photo session if it's by a pool, or they'll walk past looking like an idiot. They'll do a Mr. Bean walk or whatever, because they are done with people commanding spaces. Okay. I also think this goes along with the fact that when people are shooting content for themselves, they're not always aware that not everybody wants to be featured. And I'm not saying, like, they're in a public space, they have a right to it, but sometimes people are a bit self-conscious, or they're there, they just want to relax. And I remember there being a TikTok video of a young woman who was obviously having a very emotional day. She sat on a bench, and you could see she was visibly upset from this video. And this guy had filmed it, and he went up to ask, "Do you want to do a photo shoot? Because you look so beautiful." And she was like, "No, leave me alone." And he goes, "Oh, but I want to photograph you." And he went, "Leave me alone." And he went, "Oh." So then he proceeded to take photos of her from afar. That's awful, mate. I mean, yes, you can take photos. She's in public, but seriously, she told you to leave her alone, and then you continue to take photos. And you want to know why people get really freaked out by photographers? Like, come on, your behavior can actually affect ability for others to do their job. Okay, who are you impressing by being difficult? No brand wants to work with someone who can't handle the real world, and no client wants to feel like they're inconvenienced for people. I mean, imagine being a client and hearing like that your photographer speak like this. So let me give you some more examples. Okay, so these are ones that I picked up from social media, ones I've had personally retailed to me, and ones I've seen for myself. So a maternity photographer dragged a sofa, a floral arch, and a rug into this garden, right? Taped off a rose bed. And I'm not joking, fully taped it off, like had this like yellow hazard tape. And a family with their toddlers showed up, right? And they put them all in the vet and started photographing. The groundkeeper came over and told them they couldn't be there, and said you needed to move. She didn't have a permit. It was public access to the gardens, but not for commercial use, right? The mother of the kids kicked off and said, "I've paid for this session." And the guy said, "I don't care. You don't have permission to be here." The family complained, thinking that they had permission. That's what they paid for, even because the photographer basically blagged it. The people who own the house then started putting signs up saying that you can't do photo shoots here, and regularly patrolled it. That location was lost permanently. Had she gone and got a permit, I think the permit cost £40. She could have continued, but no. No. Now you might think, "Oh my God, Khandie, seriously, does this happen that often?" Yes, it does. There's the one of the influencer who did a picnic brand setup in a public park, gorgeous styling. Everyone was going like, "Oh my God, it's so amazing. It's absolutely beautiful." Matching, what do you call it, serviettes, everything. But she blocked off this shade area. She actually put signs on the bench area saying reserved. Now, this is a public park, so you can't reserve anything. And I know there's that story of the parents that reserve for their kid's birthday on a Saturday, and like the similar thing. She reserved it, so she said, for 3 hours, and wouldn't let anyone use it, wouldn't let anyone around in her background. And a group of elderly walkers, I think they were like the Norwegian cross walkers, the ones with the sticks and the things, they had to sit on the curb, and it got filmed. Now, when you go, "Oh, wow, okay, what happened?" She got dropped by her agency, like hotcakes, and then she was crying on TikTok about it. And everyone sided with the fact she got dropped. She was like, "What do you want from us?" People aren't gonna love creators if they start seeing this behavior. And honestly, bad behavior travels faster and more widespread than good behavior. People are gonna start side-eyeing us. Now, I'm gonna give you some good examples though. I shot a portrait session in London, and I knew it would be busy. And the client knew it was going to be busy. I told them, "We know that we can't have that." So, you know what I did? I just leaned into that. We had movement blur. We had, environmental storytelling, real human interactions, and the client loved it because it felt alive. We even got strangers walking in sync because they were naturally following the pattern of others to create this beautiful leading line effect. And you know what? People were like, "Hey, do you want me to stop?" You've seen it in my YouTube videos. No, it's public space. Like, I'm very open about this. Go, go, go. And you know what? I had a really good time on that session. You kind of don't book somewhere that's busy and then expect it not to be because you happen to have a camera. Now, I helped with a photographer friend of mine. She's a branding photographer who needed to shoot a lookbook for a campaign, and it was at Brighton. She got the permits, everything. And they kept the edges, avoiding everybody. And they knew they couldn't like do anything, right? They had to just work. Anyway, this elderly man came up, and he had his little camera, and he asked the photographer, "Hey, can you help me with mine?" And she was like, "Yeah, yeah, I help you," right? And the couple thought it was really like the couple who, sorry, not the couple, the fashion brand who saw her doing this actually took photos of this, thinking this was so cute, put it on their social media. Well, as it linked, the guy's granddaughter is a fashion blogger. And she ended up reposting it, and they got all this praise. And my friend got loads of like praise for her business. I don't know if she got any bookings, but she got loads of praise. Kindness is marketing, and respect is a branding. Like, it's a solid branding. Okay. Now, I know this causes controversy and people have got horror stories left, right, and center. There is devastation that has been done to social areas because of the influx of content creators. But that's not to say they don't do good. Okay. They highlight things, they get people coming, they do help with tourism, but they also have a detrimental effect as well. So we need to think about how can we shoot in public without being a prize twat. So let's do these things. Time your sessions wisely. I'm going to tell you now, early mornings, weekdays, off-peak hours, know the flow of the space. Don't demand stillness in a tourist hotspot at noon on a Saturday. Like, if you're going to London on a Saturday, God help you. If you expect calmness and still, God help you. That's all I'm going to say. That's kind of what I would say to you. You're an adult. You need to encourage your clients to do something else. And if you can't, then work with it. Don't work against it. Go minimal. Don't drag a full setup because you're not, unless you got permission, that's not going to happen. If your vision requires 5 lights, a wardrobe around 10 people, book a location, like book out a location. Keep it minimal. Now, I have seen this done. I'm not saying I have done this, but I like one of my friends has an A-frame that she puts out that says photo shoot in progress. Feel free to pass, stop, say hi. It goes a long way. But equally, if you've watched my YouTubes and you see me shoot in public and people have tried to go past, I was like, hey, it's a public space, go, it's fine. I can stop. We are on digital. I can delete a picture if they're in the blur. I can Photoshop them out. Like, I'm not here to stop someone else's day. People have work and lives to listen to. Also, have that conversation with your client. Prep your clients. Tell them we're in a public space. Things will happen, but we'll make magic happen anyway. Expectation management is 90% of your client experience. Okay. So if they go, I want somewhere really quiet, but they want to go to London on a Saturday, I'm like, well, then we don't go to London on a Saturday, my darling. We just don't. Okay. Always ask and never assume. If you want a space cleared for 5 minutes, there's nothing wrong in asking, would you mind if I just shoot here? But don't hog that space. Remember, the public are humans with as much entitlement to be there as you. And often, if you're shooting commercially and this is public land, you might find they have more entitlement to the space than you do. So don't think of them as props and an inconvenience. Okay. Like, I have no problem in asking people, but don't assume it's like I've done it. I was I was shooting, where was I shooting? I was literally really recently. My brain's having a brain fart. Where was I shooting? Anyway, story is I was shooting on this street, and it's like a pathway and it's like loads of terraced housing and we were doing this like street style fashion and there was a lady who was delivering flyers. And I just said, could you just hold for 2 seconds? Would you mind just so I can get this shot? Because when she went to the houses, the street was clear. And she said, yeah, no worries. Now, I only asked her the once. The girl's got a job to do. It was 2 seconds. I did 2 frames. I said, thank you so much. I really appreciate you. Thank you. Because where we needed to be, it sounds really weird, but there was like there was like a van that was deliberately parked there so that we had to get that in the background. It's complicated. But this girl was doing all the flights. Now, I didn't wait. I just asked, would you mind? If she said no, it's a thing. I would just have to time it better. But she didn't mind. There's nothing wrong with asking, but never assume you get the right way. Like if someone says to me, no, I'm working, like, I'm not going to interfere with your life, girl. You get on with you. Okay. Always have a plan B. Rain, crowds, chaos. You need to know your backup spots. Find alternative angles, mood shifts you can pivot to. Okay. Like if the background's busy, shoot lower. It's not always the best angle, but you can shoot low and shoot up at the client and you get all that sky. Like I've seen this done. I've seen this done quite a lot in London where you get the model kind of looking into the camera from above. That's quite cute picture, very editorial. And don't be afraid to have real life in your frame. Sometimes a stranger in the background makes the picture. It adds a story, contrast, content, and it doesn't mean that it doesn't have the sterile, almost fake set to it then. I mean, it's not for everybody, but if you're shooting in public, you can't control them. It's like trying to hold back the tide. You can't, okay? So, yeah. So here's my final thoughts on it. You can be a visionary. You can be an artist. You can do whatever you want without being a diva. You can be creative without controlling, and you can be powerful and create these great images without being a class A prat. You're not entitled to exclusivity in spaces you didn't rent. Be adaptable. Be respectful. Be aware of your impact. Because I promise you, your future clients, your reputation in the industry will thank you for it. I don't want to see this happening more. And we are like literally just go on TikTok, which is one of the reasons why I use TikTok so often is because there are so many videos out there and there are literally accounts that will call out this behavior as part of their content. So you don't want to end up on that, right? And you never know who's out there, okay? So if you've ever been in a park and you're like, I'm gonna shoot here and you see it's busy, just wait. Like, just wait, okay? I'm just saying, don't be the douchebag who thinks they're entitled to every single part of society because it's outside, okay? Don't. I have a story I've told many a time in my old house where I came out one day and not only had a girl open my garden gate, walked up my path and was posing outside, literally on my doormat. And bear in mind that the garden gate is like, is it about 2.5 meter walk to my front door. Like, that is all my land. She'd walked in and the photographer was in my garden because they liked the roses outside my house. And I was like, hey, had you knocked on the door, I'd probably let you, but you need to leave now. And you don't have permission. You're trespassing. And that info, you cannot be shooting that. I don't want to see that. It turned out the photographer then posted that work. And I never finished that story off, but I told them that, do you know what? You trespassed to take that picture. I am really unhappy that you went into my house to do this because that is technically my house. That's my property. It wasn't just a little way in. They opened the gate and walked up. Like, honestly, and picked some of the roses, which really aggravates me because no, no, if you'd asked up to the door, say, would you mind if we did some photo at the front? I'd be like, cool with it. But to open my door and walk into it, nah, not okay. And then the house has now been sold. And I have been told by my neighbours, my old neighbours, that this still happens there. And then the new owners of the house have had to actually lock the gate. It doesn't happen very often. I don't want to like say it's like this amazing place, but in like right now, I know the roses will be blooming. So they say like the new owner has to lock the gate. It's annoying. Also, I know that my friend in London is in one of those places where it's like he's got a certain coloured house and people really like to pose outside it. And he now has like a railing on it to stop people doing it. I've done a whole episode on this before, but this one's a little bit more like how not to be a bellend. So yeah, if you have enjoyed this episode, I hope so. Let me know, send me a thumbs up, tell me if you have seen any of this behavior. I would love to know. So reach out to me on Instagram at Khandie Photo, or just leave me a message here on the comments on Spotify or on YouTube. I want to know. I want to know because I love hearing these stories. I love watching these videos. Honestly, I'm so here for it. Anyway, see you soon. Take care, my darlings. Don't be a douchebag. Don't shoot like a twat, and just have good fun out there. And remember, you are not the most important person in the entire world because that's me. I'm joking. Okay, take care.